I'd like to call to order our August 19th, 2024 board meeting. I apologize for that very loud bang. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Mr. Hogan.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Do I have a second? Ms. Snipes seconded. Any discussion?
I have a motion. I move that we amend the agenda to add the discussion for the new policy for Proviso 1.120, student physical safety, before number 16 on tonight's discussion agenda.
Second.
All right, my motion's been made and seconded to amend the agenda to add,
Discussion of a new policy for Proviso 1.120, student physical safety, before number 16.
Proviso 1 point,
120.
is that the bathroom one?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead. You have,
It was stated by the superintendent, that we needed to have these things, be addressed by school boards. And I think it's been like kind of over a month. And so I think that with all the discussion that we have regarding policy for tonight in general, I think that it would be just good to add it to the discussion. I think it's been asked to be added on previously, but I don't see why we can't go ahead and discuss it tonight.
all right. Mr. Satterfield?
Yeah, I know that there's a lot to discuss, and I know that was going to be a very lengthy discussion, I'm sure. I'm sure there are a lot of opinions regarding that. Dr. Ross, are we having any issues regarding that?
No, sir. We have, there have been, I believe, 11 new laws that have been passed. We have to take up all of these policies. It was our discussion not to do them all at one night. So we're all going to take up this. The administration doesn't have any discussion points for tonight, but we have a plan to take up. It'll be my opinion if we can take up those provisos that are directly related to budgeting issues. So that's the cell phone and also what we have to discuss tonight, which is KEC.
Yeah. And Ms. Barnes, I'm not opposed to having the discussion. I just think there's an awful lot on our plate, and I think that looking at least when I was studying my notes, going through preparing for tonight's meeting, so we could be here till midnight, I think. So maybe we could put it on the docket for the next meeting or one of the up-and-coming meetings.
Right. Well, I will say that the agenda tonight is very heavy on policy. It was requested by the administration to talk about several different policies. And some of these policies, in order for everyone to have a full discussion, will take a long time. And for purposes of how late the meeting goes, these are pretty, these conversations, everybody has opinions on them. We wanted to make sure that we had enough time where people weren't getting tired, discussing these. The policy that you're talking about specifically, there's been a lot of conversation about. I've had many conversations with lots, different people, definitely with what the School Board Association put out, and talking to other elected officials at the state level about that and trying to get some clarification on. And we've also just had a Supreme Court opinion come out this week since the last board officer meeting. So things have been kind of fluid with that. And before we have that conversation, just to have it as a talking political point, I wanted to kind of give it a little bit of time. And Dr. Ross had mentioned that these policies that we're talking about tonight, tie into funding, and there are several of them that will probably take a while. So it just didn't make it onto this agenda. It is absolutely going to be addressed. It's not something that we're trying not to put on the agenda. But luckily, we don't have a policy like the School Board Association policy, which would make it a very urgent matter. Our policy, it has some language that probably needs to be tightened up, but it's not overly broad, in my opinion, that would make it a pressing priority. That's just my thoughts. I don't know. Mr. Hogan?
And from what I'm hearing, Dr. Ross, it doesn't sound like the administration has really anything kind of teed up to have a conversation on this topic tonight.
Yes, sir. This is kind of evolving. I'm checking my email right now. At 2:23 p.m. today, we received an email from the South Carolina School Boards Association regarding this policy, and it's changes.
And that
So-
just defends the school board association. I mean, they're just defending their policy. I don't really think that, their policy does not have to be adapted. I mean, they made it very clear at the school board conference that, that it didn't need to be adapted because it upset several school board members, including myself.
So I'm just saying that
Yeah.
to say I would like to include all the information for our discussion.
Right, I agree. Ms. Huddle?
I'm concerned that we're delaying it unnecessarily when we're not really waiting on anything. We've got a letter from the Department of Education dated July 23rd instructing us to do this and telling us that they're charged with taking 25% of our operating revenue and that we were supposed to do this before school started back. And so that really concerns me. We discussed it, or the superintendent presented this at our last school board meeting, and that night I asked for it to be on the agenda, and we're putting other policies in front of it for tonight, the KEC, which we do have a temporary policy in place for that because we've put the state's regulation out there, and we don't have anything for this, and I'm concerned that we're not following the Department of Ed's instructions and we're jeopardizing our
The
funding.
Department of Education is aware of our agenda.
Okay, well, that may be, but I mean, then we need open discussion as to why we're not talking about it.
We just did. And I
Well,
think
okay,
that
well,
was a good-
nobody
that's a good
gave me
thing.
a reason. I sent an agenda request asking for it, and all I got back was, we're not going to talk about it. So then I asked, why? What are we waiting on? And I think that's a legitimate question.
Okay, I think we just had that discussion.
Okay,
All right,
and
Miss-
I would like to put this in the minutes.
Go for it. Mr. Satterfield?
Yeah, again, I don't think anybody doesn't think it's an important issue. But prior to board meetings, I really study my notes. I study my book. I try to read up on what's going on with the School Board Association and all the emails and all the information that we're getting to prepare so I can have an educated, at least as far as the best I can do, a discussion and understand why I'm discussing. This was not on the agenda, and I am not prepared. I don't feel like I'm properly prepared.
All right.
If I know it's coming up, I will prepare myself so I can make some reasonable suggestions or give some sort of input where I'm aware of what does that make sense? I just don't feel like I'm prepared. I understand it's important, and I give, I give full credence to that. I'm just not prepared to discuss it, so I really wouldn't be able to offer, as a board member, I would not be able to offer anything pertinent to that, so.
Okay, so this is a motion to amend the agenda, and I will say we have a meeting starting at 7, and we still have to go into executive session. So, last comment, and then
question.
Mr. Scully,
I was going to say call the question, but
Okay,
go
okay.
ahead, Matt.
go
I
ahead.
guess, Dr. Ross, kind of to go back to my original question, I don't necessarily think you guys are prepared to have this discussion tonight. But to Mr. Satterfield, I don't think he's prepared. If it was not to be discussed tonight, when could we expect it to be on the agenda for discussion? Is there an expectation of
I mean,
the
we
next
can put it
meeting?
on the next meeting.
No, I have
As
no
long
problem
as-
to be on the next meeting.
Right, I mean, as long as we don't have 500 things going to where we have an 11 o'clock meeting, then, I mean, I have no problem. The conversation to even put this on the agenda has taken so long. That's kind of what we were talking about, trying to put all of the other policies. There were more policies on the draft than there are on this meeting, and they were taken out. So, I mean, I have no problem putting that on the agenda for the next meeting.
And I just want to say too, I know as we adopt our policies, we have to go through 2 readings. The state understands as we're going through this. The reason I explained it in the superintendent's report a month ago is to show you what the practices are now. But we don't want to make bad policy. I think we need to take into consideration the information. We have 3 provisos or laws that are jeopardizing our funding. And teachers and administrators are very nervous about these. And so I think if we take that time, we have cell phones and restrooms and instructional materials all on the next meeting. But we're waiting for guidance, and I think when we get that, we had 4 days to prepare for tonight. And we just want to be able to answer questions and speak intelligently about these changes.
So can we be
Okay.
assured that it
All
will
right.
be on the agenda for next meeting?
As long as we don't have like something crazy come up where we would have a super, I'm not gonna, I'm not, first of all, I don't make the agenda.
I understand
I
that.
mean, and we talk about this and they're open, as long as there's not like something crazy that comes up and we have a manageable meeting or agenda, a discussion agenda, I have no problem with that. But we have several really big conversations to start
No,
tonight,
completely,
and
yeah,
putting that on there
Right.
is, I mean, there's a lot of priority, different, people have different priorities, and all of them are important, and they're all very important to the State Department right now. I think we're all very much aware of that. I'm gonna call the question. This needs a 2/3 vote, to change the agenda, but, I'll call for the question. All in favor of Ms. Barnhart's motion? All opposed? All right, that motion fails 5-2. That moves us to our original motion to approve the agenda. All in favor to approve the agenda? All opposed? A motion carries 6-1. And do I have a motion to enter executive session? Mr. Hogan.
I'd like to make a motion to enter executive session to consider the following: A, selected employment items, Exhibit A for action; B, selected employment items, Exhibit B, information only; C, contractual matter regarding professional development services, Exhibit C; and D, contractual matter regarding financial advisor, and Exhibit D.
Do I have a second? Ms. Snipes seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? That's 6 or 7. That motion carries 7-0, and we will adjourn for executive session and reconvene at 7 p.m.